This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Underrated Movie Podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss films that are underrated, underappreciated, and ones that have flown under the radar and passed most people by. I am your host, Derek McDuff, and today we are going to be discussing the 1979 film written and directed by Nicholas Meyer, Time After Time, starring Malcolm McDowell, David Warner, and Maureen Steenburgen. And today I am joined by my buddy Justin Keyson. He's a podcaster, host of the Nothing New podcast. He's also a filmmaker. How's it going, Justin?
Oh, I'm very good. I'm really excited to talk about this movie. I'm also very curious to hear what you have to say about it, because it was one of the things to discuss on the list, and I was like, ooh, that's on there. That's cool. So,
yeah. I'm glad somebody finally picked it. But yeah, I'm glad to have you on because there's kind of like a group of us, podcasting buddies, and I've had most people on, but I haven't got a chance to get you on, so I really wanted to get you on, and I love that this was your pick. Before we get too much into it, what do you want to let everybody know about yourself and about Nothing New?
So yeah, thanks for the intro. I'm Justin Keyson. I'm the co-host of Nothing New, a remake podcast with Andrew Lindy. We've been doing the shows since 2017. It's a monthly show, and every episode we discuss a film and its upcoming remake or a remake that it was made within its timeline. And we've seen and sat through a lot of very interesting movies, and it's sometimes a great excuse to watch a classic that I've never seen before, but then sadly sometimes I have to dread watching the remake because I'm not sure how well that's going to turn out. Or just sometimes it's just fun to see some fun pairings and such. And we've been doing that show for fairly well for like 9 years. Next year will be the 10-year anniversary of the show, and that's going to be weird to me to realize that. And yeah, I'm also a filmmaker. I've been a filmmaker since 2007. I'm a producer of a feature film called Olympia with a Vengeance, and wrote, directed many things. And I don't know when this will officially drop, but if you go to my Instagram account, my 48-hour short film that I directed and I worked with a bunch of really talented folks will be on there. It's called Thick as Thieves, and that is like a film that we wrote, shot, and edited in 48 hours. So there we go.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. A few underrated guests, or future and past guests have been on in that movie. So excited to take that one out.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. Like we said, we're talking about Time After Time, which is one of the older movies that I've talked about here. I'm definitely a big fan of this. It's very 70s.
Yeah.
It was one of those movies I was vaguely aware of. Like I think I'd seen parts of it on the Sci-Fi Channel or something like that growing up. I think the time machine itself is kind of iconic, and it's got a place in nerd culture, but definitely not. It is, I would say, very underrated for sure. But I first saw it at the Frida, and afterwards,
nice.
Nicholas Meyer himself actually came and did a Q&A, and that was a lot of fun. But I was wondering what your history is with this movie.
First, I'm really jealous of you going to that screening. Dang, cool. I didn't know he was there. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna home brag. I got his auto. I've got in my house. I've got like a Time After Time poster signed by him. That I just
hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, my exposure with the movie very much like yours. Watched it on cable, and I was a very big fan of H.G. Wells as a kid. I was reading The Time Machine, War of the Worlds, and huge fan of the Time Machine movie from the 1960s, George Pal directed film. And I got into, like time travel was a big obsession of mine for a while because like Back to the Future is my favorite movie of all time. And my brother, who's like the biggest film influence in my life, he's the one who kind of introduced me to film. He was like, there's a movie where H.G. Wells fought Jack the Ripper. And I'm like, what? And so we caught it on I think Sci-Fi Channel as well, and it like never left my head. I was like, this movie's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you brought up like the way, that premise was presented to you, because it is such, for people who don't know, that's the premise of the movie. It's H.G. Wells actually invented a real time machine, has a dinner party. One of his guests, his friend, is like, oh, actually, he's secretly Jack the Ripper. The police showed up, and he snuck away in his time machine and travels to the far off year of 1979, which, as you said, happened to be the year the movie was made. Which I love. That's the trick that Meyer pulls again when he makes another time travel movie. When he makes Star Trek 4, the one with the whales. Yep. Where he's like, oh yeah, they're going to the past, and that's the way they could make a cheap Star Trek movie, is like they go back to 1986, just because that's when the movie was being made. So I love that. That whole, it's such a unique, weird, fun premise for the movie, and it really feels like it works with the kind of movie this is, where the movie's quirky, but in the best possible way.
For sure. It's tight on that note with Nicholas Myers on Star Trek. I made that realization, and like I went, they're both in San Francisco.
Yeah. Which it's weird because like San Francisco, it makes sense in Star Trek lore because that's like where Starfleet is. But it just they both have to be like going to like the late 70s, early 80s San Francisco.
Yeah. One goes to the future, one goes to the past. It's kind of perfect.
Yeah.
But no, the premise is such a great hook, and I think the thing I love so much about how the film delivers on the premise is that it thinks of every conceivable angle that it can with the premise, and it's not just that H.G. Wells is in the past or in the future. It's that H.G. Wells is a man who has to figure out, okay, so how do I get money? How do I feed myself? Where do I stay? Those questions are addressed, and at least he had the forethought, whatever, to like bring some kind of jewelry or money to see if he can exchange it or trade it, something, because he knew he needed currency when he got to
he says, I want to trade with the locals or something, or the natives or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. So he at least knew that's probably still going to be a thing in 1979, but the fact that like every obstacle hits his way on just trying to adjust before he can even really start the hunt for the Ripper is kind of great. And even knowing that, well, if I had to do that, he had to do that. So, it's such everything elegantly kind of falls into place, and all because like Meyer and knew how to write everything possible with the premise of a guy, if H.G. Wells was in 1979, what does he actually have to do when he gets there?
Yeah, it feels like it's a perfectly set up and like utilized time travel story where it's almost like it predates like the internet culture of like looking for every plot hole. It's like, no, we figured out, like, it's everything makes sense. Everything is like, it's like, well, how would he have done this? It's like, well, he did this by this, and it's so meticulously crafted. And I love all the little MacGuffins and like things that like he's like, well, this is the return key, you need this to get back, and that's how the time machine gets back to him. Like, and then it's like, oh, and this is like the equalizer, and if you don't have this, you'll be like zooped into the void or whatever. Like, I love all the little things that sets up like that, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be important later. And I also love, like, once again, that 70s low budget effect of whenever like he pulls it out and like the screen just kind of glints or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like when he does the time travel itself, right? And it's just like this weird, negative like thing like going on. And I'm watching this and I'm like, this comes out, 10 years after 2001. So it's not like they didn't, this comes out a couple years after Star Wars. So it's not like they didn't have the ability to make something look really like crazy and good. They just didn't have the budget.
Right.
But they worked within their budget to give you something fun, give you something cool and believable. It's not the most over the top thing. It's a very character driven thing with a core sci-fi premise.
Yes.
But the way it delivers that is so good, and it's like, because of the way, it's like watching Hausu or something now, where it's just like the effects of it give it this like really great charm, like even the opening credits where it's just like time after time. Like I love all of that. I was immediately like, wow, this is so fun. It's just, it feels cozy,
Cozy is such a good word to bring that, because it feels cozy. I don't know. Even with the London fog in the beginning of the movie, it's like he kind of wants you to like bundle up and like, all right, get ready.
Mm-hmm.
Something else, it's kind of had this sort of thought when I was watching Roadhouse a couple years ago, and I'm go with me. Trust me, I have a place where So I was watching Roadhouse for our episode on Roadhouse, because we're going to do Patrick Swayze and then Jake Gyllenhaal. JPG was in that episode. Nice. And I want to point out, insisted on being in that episode.
Okay, all right. That's a choice.
Right? He's like, you better do, if you're doing Roadhouse, I better do that one. I'm like, all right. Anyway, so I'm watching Roadhouse, and the thing that I realized I loved about Roadhouse is, one element I really loved was like, the movie was made in 1989. And the thing that I kind of started really digging about is like, oh, this was made in like the last year 80s tropes are allowed.
Yeah.
So all 80s tropes was hanging on by a thread. And it's like, we can do one more time, but next year is the 90s and we can't do half this stuff anymore. So like power ballads, cheesy sexy scenes, all that stuff that was very of the time period was hanging on to dear life in Roadhouse, because it knew next year is the 90s. We're not doing these anymore. So what I love about Time After Time, it's 1979. It's so 70s because it knows by next year it's the 80s.
Yes. These arbitrary lines we've decided where it's like, this is where this era ends and this is where this era starts, because it's just, our calendars are just set up that way.
Exactly. So like there's like a disco scene in the movie. Pure disco. There's Ripper in like the most Travolta-y looking outfit, straight out of Saturday Night Fever. And here's like this beautiful woman, like perfect afro, great makeup, and it's like the most 70s gear I've seen on her, on any character in this movie. And it's like this is a big sign of, we know we're ending this decade, so we can't do. I know it's not intentional, but it's what it feels like. It's like, no more disco scenes after this year, because I don't know if people are going to do disco in the 80s. And so it feels like the 70s hanging on. And it's kind of perfect for this movie because it has to sort of represent the time period at its fullest. Because the 1893 and 1979 have to be very distinct, so that it makes the like H.G. Wells is like, I time lag, it's best I can describe it. Like jet lag, time lag is him going, oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, I love the way that he gets to the future. And initially he has this whole idea of like, oh, I'm going off to this like utopia future, like by this time period, like things he pictures it very much like a Star Trek future where there's like no money and like everybody lives in harmony, there's no like war or anything. And then he gets to the 70s and it's, the grungy like 1970s, like he learns about like the world wars and like all this stuff and like all these horrible things that happen. And, the Ripper is like, he's like, I'm an amateur. And it's almost like From Hell, like if you're familiar with that graphic novel, which is like, for anybody listening, one of the core premises of that graphic novel is that like the modern world kind of grew out of Jack the Ripper, like his violence and stuff like that. And like, it feels like that's kind of something that he's touching on here, where it's like, yeah, like there's just so much violence and all this stuff like that. And obviously H.G. Wells, who's like this, like envisions this socialist utopia and like, all this harmony and stuff like that. He's kind of like taken aback. But then he starts to realize like, no, wait, there's some good things. I love when he goes to the bank and he has to kind of check his own assumptions, where he's like, oh yeah, is there a gentleman here I can speak to about and Maureen Steenburgen and just like that great introduction to her, she's just like, well, I'm in charge here, honey. Like she's like,
Yeah.
does it all like she's like, yeah, and he's like, women's lib, wow, he's like, wow, okay, so in some ways it's more progressive than
Right.
I would think, and I love that that spirit of the '70s because the '70s was a time when there was a lot of crazy progressive stuff happening. You have like Jimmy Carter putting like solar panels on the White House and like trying to get peace in the Middle East, and then of course you have the Reagan years like right after that, and you rip those panels off immediately, and like we got set back again. But I was talking with my girlfriend last night who was watching it for the first time, and we're talking about like how the films of the '70s also were a lot like more interesting and progressive, and you had these films that were much more character driven. They have like plots like this, whereas like the '80s, when you have time travel movies in the '80s, as much as I love a lot of those, they're like the Terminator or something, or you have these franchises like Rambo, which the first Rambo is like this quiet movie like where it's about a Vietnam vet dealing with trauma. One person dies, and then Rambo just goes around killing the entire country of Vietnam in the sequels.
Yeah, right.
And this feels like you were saying, the way that this was kind of like, hey, we're like, this is the last gasp of disco and all these things. It also feels like this is the last gasp for a kind of quaint time travel movie where it's like, oh, this like funny premise of these two Victorians chasing each other around San Francisco and not killer robots coming back in time.
Right. No, that's a very good point. It's 70s wars like like you're talking about like Taxi Driver and such, where it's like just this purely character driven movies. And this movie is truly character driven, but with a very strong sci-fi premise and a thriller premise. And you're right, it does feel like that before Hollywood kind of got overthinking in how do we make more money faster, and the more capitalism kind of like approach to like, no, let's make 8 sequels and 20 like Star Wars made a lot of money. Why aren't we making 1 billion more Star Wars?
Right. Yeah.
I kind of going back to like talking about Wells' sort of disappointment to being in 1979, because like you brought up the fact that like he had this like hopes and dreams of like, oh yeah, well, by then it should be a utopia and we should all figure things out. And I kind of love it because how we learned about that is it's a chess scene with him and the man we find out is going to be the Ripper. And what's great about that chess scene is it's such a great way of being on the nose, but in a good way, of setting up their dynamics as friends, but also their dynamics as adversaries. And it shows their kind of ideologies all in a nice, tidy package of what seems like a casual conversation with buddies, with their buddies surrounding them. So what's kind of great about that is like you have Wells spitting, oh yeah, in 30 years we're gonna be a utopia, it's gonna be great. And then you have the guy who we find out to be the Ripper being like, dude, I don't know, 100 years of war shows me otherwise. But all right, man. And he always beats him. And he always beats him in chess. They stayed that. They established that. It's like, oh, you beat me again. And Ripper's guy's like, because I'm always a step of you, dude. And that so perfectly establishes the chase that's got to happen in the movie. Because when they do confront each other in the present, and here's Ripper going, I was right.
Yeah.
Number one, I was right. And the world... I was a weirdo. He literally says, I was a freak in our time. I'm normal here. The only person who's out of time is you. And I'm like, ooh, damn.
Yeah, and I love how easy it feels like it is for the Ripper to adapt. Whereas like H.G. Wells is really struggling. Like he's just kind of like, this motor car, like he's just like, oh yes, what is this happening over here? He still wears his like Victorian clothes throughout the whole movie, and like I think even the Ripper at some point says he's like, you're so Victorian, and then meanwhile the Ripper, like, he immediately gets like a nice suit and everything, and then he like you said, he goes to that disco club and wears the John Travolta thing. He's really able to like adapt, and it feels like he is so much more of a like chess player where he's like always figuring out moves ahead. And it's not until the very, very end of the movie that H.G. Wells finally makes a move that is ahead of him.
Yeah.
So I really like that whole dynamic where he's just kind of like, I've never beaten him at chess. Now we're in this kind of like ultimate chess match to the death. And
Mhm,
now
mhm.
I'm kind of, behind it again. He thinks he loses. There's that whole fake out death where you see the
Yeah.
hand and everything.
Oh my god, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And at that point, I'm like, what's going to happen? Are they going to time travel back, or And then you find out like, oh, it was her friend, which was a cool little fake out. And I like that this movie has really strong time travel rules. I hate like a time travel movie where they like establish something
Oh
and
yeah.
then they just go back on it. Like you can make it whatever rules you want for time travel. Time travel's not real, as far as I know. And so it's like whatever, like it's made up, just do whatever. But once you establish this is how it works, you got to be consistent. And this movie
Yeah.
is consistent. It's really solid time travel, like storytelling.
100%. No, there's a lot of the fact that they're so good at making sure they don't. I think, like you said, like explaining how the machine works with Wells in the beginning is all these things to justify how it works, how to get how Ripper steals the time machine, but only for the machine to come back.
Hmm.
How, yeah, how Wells defeats the Ripper at the end. It is one of my favorite things because you're right. It's that bit where he beats him finally. And one detail I never noticed until I watched it recently was he sees it. Ripper sees that he beats him. And
Hmm.
instead of fighting back, he kind of nods and went, okay. He's like,
Yeah,
do it. You won.
yeah,
He
yeah.
doesn't try to fight back. He's like, you know what?
He's like,
Fuck.
all right, rip the cord, man. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
fair fucks, dude. You did it.
yeah.
Do it.
Yeah, and that's a good example of, we talked about all, the efficient visual storytelling that goes into that, like the key and like the, pulling the thing out and, the hand, like all this stuff. It really establishes a very strong film language for the plot, but it does the same thing with the characters because there's these
Yeah.
character beats that are just never spoken about. They're only shown visually that really give you a sense of who these guys are. Like I mentioned the suits and stuff like that, but it's also stuff like the very beginning, before the movie even kicks off, you see him kill that first sex worker, and he's like, he says, "My name is Jack," and then you hear a ripping sound. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
Jack the Ripper. There we go.
Mhm.
Or there's this one of my favorite beats of the whole movie is his glasses break in that first
Yeah.
like time travel sequence, and he sees like this museum, dedicated to himself, and he's like sees his old desk, and he just kind of like, oh, and he grabs the fresh pair of glasses from the drawer,
Yeah.
and it's such a good beat, and it tells you that this guy is resourceful, that he will think on his feet, and he will like, and it's also just a funny moment. The
Yeah.
movie is
Yeah.
filled with all of this great storytelling, and I think that comes from Meyer being such a strong creative writer. And one of the things he talked about because he was a novelist, and
Mhm.
this is the first movie he directed. He was, a novelist who turned into a screenwriter, who turned into a director. And one of the things he talked about when he was doing that Q&A after the Frida was like, when you're writing a novel, you can write whatever, like you can just like write like all these crazy things that are happening in the time travel sequence. But you still like, people kind of fill in the blanks. And that's one thing he was talking about too, is like, part of the reason that, those time travel sequences aren't that elaborate is the budget. But another part is because he wanted you to start to fill in the blanks a little bit with yourself. So he gives you these kind of visuals, but with that novelist background, he's like, I'm not going to just tell you everything. I'm going to give you some kind of information about it, but I'm going to let your imagination run a little bit wild.
Yeah. Yeah. He was very. It's wild to think this is his first film, by the way. Like as a
Yeah.
director, it's so confidently done. There's a lot. I think we kind of take for granted how good he can be, and I know he's made a lot of
Mhm.
films between the Star Treks and this one as well. But and yeah, the various degrees of success. But I feel like this is a movie where he should be examined in terms of just efficient storytelling as a filmmaker, as a director, and like just even like the chase scene, the first initial chase scene between Ripper and Wells is simple, but it's really effective, and especially the bit where they're at two separate bridges and they're just sort of
Yeah.
staring to each other down, and it's enough to keep the tension going because it's one side note. I always do love that. While I appreciate that Wells is clearly like, oh, it's my responsibility. He's here causing a chaos in the future. That's not on me, so I got to fix this. Then he does, and then the reminder is like, right. Problem though, Wells, is that you're still a kind of a nerd. And, and the Ripper easily takes your glasses off and then proceeds to beat you up.
Yeah. Yeah,
Which
that's
I'm like,
such a good beat.
yeah, no, I even like simple chase scenes are great, like car chase scenes, which I know at Hollywood at this point it's a dime a dozen, but like establish the idea that H.G. Wells can't drive because why would he?
Mhm. Yeah.
and then have this really intense car chase, and the only way for it to add more tension is the fact that like, well, here's a man from the 1800s who's never drove a car before, has to do a car chase at night
Mhm.
in the busy San Francisco road. And what's great is like, kind of love how Mary Steenburgen's character Amy is sort of like keeping her cool,
Mhm.
but is aware that Wells is behind them, and like trying her best to not call it out so that Jack the Ripper can realize, oh damn, he's following us.
Yeah.
Side on that, we haven't talked enough about Mary Steenburgen yet. And I feel
Yes,
like
yes.
we need to rectify that.
Yeah.
She's great. She's kind of a great modern woman to be Wells's romantic interest. Side note, also hilarious because this will be not her last time she's in a romantic relationship in a movie with a time traveler.
Right,
Back to Future
yes.
Part 3.
Mhm. Exactly, yeah.
That time it's the time traveler falls in love with her, who's the woman of the time period, but in that case, she's from the past.
Right, yeah, yeah. Doc Brown comes from the future, and both times they're like, "You wouldn't believe me." And she's like, "Wait a minute."
Yeah, that's true.
She's like, "Oh, it's funny because like in both of them, she's like a very different character. She's kind of like a mousy teacher character. She's just like,
Yeah.
oh yes, you know. And this one, she's like, I'm a woman of today, you know. Like I've got my
Right.
career, but like she's has the same beats. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I almost imagine she kind of went like, I literally did this scene 10 years ago. But yeah, I do like that her character is a very modern woman. She's even like outly like hitting on Wells.
Hmm.
She's like
Oh yeah.
straight up like, oh, she's digging that British dude, and she wants to go on a date with him immediately. And like, Wells is so obviously caught up in the mission that he's like, huh, what? Oh, okay, you know.
Mm-hmm. And I love their dynamic. You know, like the way, yeah, she's the one who asks him out. She's a very modern woman. You know, she's like
Mhm.
pursuing him, and she's the one who is making all the romantic moves at first. You know, and he's just
Yeah.
very like, oh, reserved. And I love that bit where he's like, he thinks he's like being progressive. He's like, I wrote a thing about free love. He's like, oh yeah, I haven't heard that term since 8th grade. Like it's just,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
so modern. You know, like that. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
people, you know, like hook up now. And he's just like, oh wow, okay. Like he's like, that was it's another example of him thinking he's being very, very like forward thinking and progressive, but now it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like this is something that we have come to accept that is normal, that is a good thing, you know, that people should like be allowed to love who they love and stuff. And yeah, so I really like them, and she's so good. She's incredible in this. She's amazing. I wish I saw her in more stuff. She's one of our great actors, but
For
I think
sure,
the trio of all three of these actors are so good, and that's when you have a movie that is so character focused. That is an absolute essential. She's so good. Obviously, you know, David Warner, who
Oh, incredible.
he's such a good, just like you need a British evil dude. He's great, you know, like
Yeah.
he's just such a fucking prick. He's just like this tall, menacing guy. Like I always think like he's obviously like the master control / bad guy in Tron, the first Tron movie. And then, you know, something people might recognize him more from is he's the guy who goes and murders everybody for Billy Zane in Titanic. You know, like
That's
he's
right.
just like
That's right.
Yeah. So he's so good. And then you have McDowell, who is just like so charming. He's just like,
Yeah.
like he's got his little mustache and his slutty little glasses. I fucking love Malcolm McDowell. It was so good to see him in this because, you know, he's somebody who he can be a villain. You know, he can
Yeah.
be like being one of the droogs or whatever, but he can also he has this warmth to him.
Yeah.
And it's so good to see that side to him. So I think the trifecta of the three of them is really the juice of this movie.
No, for sure. Like the bank scene with Warner and Mary when he comes back, right?
Yeah.
Is such a great performance for both of them because it's like she's calling Wells and being like, "Hey, your murderous buddy's here."
Yeah. And then when he has that like little jump scare, and it plays a little bit cheesy, but it could be like it could have been like a total joke if it wasn't like so like if they both weren't selling it so like if they were like kind of like this is silly, but like they're both really acting like she looks terrified, and he just kind of comes in. He's got this like steel, like he just shows up at the side of the frame.
Yeah,
he's
so
like,
good.
I'm gonna fucking kill you. Get well, like, oh man, like terrifying.
It's so good. And like, yeah, you're right. It could have totally been wrong, but it was the dedication of and believability of both made it work. I even love how he realized how she figured like how he's I loved how they wrote Jack the Ripper to be so smart in this moment, because as far as as far as he's concerned, oh, I'm just doing what I'm doing. Oh, she says it's gonna take some time, and then when she mentions the hotel, he's like, yeah, wait, and then immediately he's like, son of a bitch, that's how he found out. You told him. And I'm like, oh, she didn't even have more than 5 minutes to try to like lull him, then hoping that Wells gets there. He figures it out. And she's doing her best to be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But he's like, no, fuck this. You know?
Yep. It's just that chess match again.
And it's so, yeah, they're both so good in that scene, and like you feel her fear, but you feel that she's also doing her best to like not let him be intimidated, but she's clearly intimidated. And he's like, yeah, I can smell that you're scared. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to switch gears a little bit. So if you have anything else to say, keep going.
No. Let's switch the gears.
Well, because one thing you were talking about was, the way that she pops back up again in Back to the Future 3. We talked about how Meyer would do a lot of Star Trek, and he wrote The Voyage Home. And obviously there's movie has a lot of, I guess, heritage, I guess is the word. I don't know the best word to use for, future time travel movies. Yeah. And not just in the way that like, it's like the cast and crew worked on it, but it feels like it's very influential in terms of, because we saw so many great time travel movies in the 80s and onward. And obviously, there's stuff before this, like we talked about The Time Machine. But this feels like it's so influential with a lot of the time travel stuff, particularly with Back to the Future, that would come out later. Did you feel its influence in later things?
I think so, for sure. I think the idea of like time travel as a premise for your like as an added layer to your normal genre is a big part of it. Oh, it's one thing to like do chasing a serial killer movie. Okay, fine. Anyone can sort of write that. Then they added the added spice of pause. What if it's Jack the Ripper and it's in the 1800s? And then that same person, wait, what if it's H.G. Wells chasing Jack the Ripper? Well, wait, why would he do that? Then that writer, because I know Myers is the final screenplay writer, but the story was also written by Steve Hayes. So I'm imagining Steve Hayes was like coming up like, what if Wells made a time machine? And so all that added flavor. And so when you think of other time travel movies that sort of decide that time travel is a flavor to the story, Back to the Future, a great example is, Bob Gale always said that the story of Back to the Future was, I was looking through my parents' yearbook and I thought, I wonder if I was a teenager who went to their school, would I have been friends with my parents? Right. And then he thought that and went, well, how would I do that? How would that be a possibility? And then time travel came up. So it's a comedy. Back to the Future is essentially a comedy, character-based comedy about a guy connecting to his parents when they were teenagers. But that is in existence because it's a time travel story. Yes, there's still adventure-y stuff about it, but its premise at its heart is about a guy who's connecting with his parents when they're teenagers. And it's a comedy. And Time After Time took the thriller concept, added time travel. So here they took this premise and added time travel. And yeah, they could have even done like Marty gets his head bonked on the head and all of a sudden he wakes up in 1955. But come on, you got to add a cool time machine, right? So yeah. And so Back to the Future adds that to the storyline to make it a more interesting film. And then even with like Myers' own like Voyage Home, I can't help but noticed that because of experience writing time after time, he was like, well, I'm I'm here again. I'm doing this again.
Hmm.
So the scene where Wells is trying to sell jewelry at a jewelry shop, right?
Hmm.
And the problem there is that he doesn't have the proper identification, so he can't sell it. When you look at Star Trek 4, there is that scene where Kirk is selling the glasses
Oh yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
and he's able to sell it. And I'm
Mhm.
assuming it's because like the Trek, like the Enterprise crew knew that like, well, we need some identification to show that we're from this time.
Right.
So he's doing the scene again, but this time it works. And I even like the added joke of like Bones going, "Like, but that was a gift for so and so," and Kirk going, "Well, technically speaking, I'm gonna get it again eventually."
Yeah, there's so much like clever time travel stuff in both of those movies, and yeah, I
Yeah,
love how time travel is just used in a lot of these movies as like not an excuse, but as a good reason to explore something.
yeah,
Like you mentioned, like, oh, would I be friends with my parents? This is like, okay, we're gonna have a thriller with Jack the Ripper, and maybe it's because it's like, okay, well, we don't have enough to make a period piece. We can still set it, this is, let us set it in modern day San Francisco. I know that it was based on a novel that was being written concurrently by Meyer's friend Carl Alexander.
okay.
But it was still like, the movie comes out, I think, right before or like right around the same time, because it's kind of like the same thing with Steven Spielberg and Jurassic Park, where
Mhm.
his buddy's writing this thing and he's like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm gonna make that, and just kind of like runs with it and doesn't really adapt it, but kind of just is like, all right, here's the basic premise. Like apparently, like only 55 pages of the book were written when he started filming. So I love that it's like, yeah, this is such a cool premise. And Meyer being like somebody who's like a novelist and but also a screenwriter and understands what works as a movie and what works as a book is like, oh, this book that you're writing, I can make that into a movie very easily, very cheaply, and very effectively. It's
Yeah.
him really understanding the medium that he's working with.
Yeah. No, for sure. I'm just curious, is there any other examples you can think of that you can clearly see time after time's influence on?
I mean, definitely, like I would say, Back to the Future, and then of course Voyage Home. I would say are really big ones. I'm trying to because I was thinking of a bunch of them last night, and I wish I had like taken notes. But I mean, I feel like just bits and pieces of it are in like any kind of time travel-y thing. Like anything that has been made afterward. I think in one way or another is going to do it. Like the way that they have this really cool time machine, like I think
Yeah.
that is like the DeLorean. I feel like owes a lot to the time machine in this, and
Yeah.
yeah, I wish I could think of more examples off the top of my head, because I think that this is a really influential time travel movie, and it doesn't get the credit that it deserves, and that's why it's here on Underrated.
Mhm, yeah, exactly. I totally agree.
Yeah. How about you? Is there any other ones you would bring up?
It's funny. I'm looking through did a little bit of a Google search to remind me of
Hmm.
certain movies, and I feel like the way to use time travel like this, because obviously there's other ways of other films using time travel, but I feel
Hmm.
like to use it like this, it's kind of like only movie I can think of that does an interesting thing with time travel is Looper.
Yeah, it's funny because I was like thinking like, oh yeah, like this is a different time travel than Looper, for example. That was like
Yeah.
actually that and Source Code were the two I was thinking of.
Oh, Source Code. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
Source Code is, and there's the thing where like time travel is used as a way to kind of like look at the past, kind of like prevent a thing, right? Like
Hmm.
Source Code does that. Edge of Tomorrow does that.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like, like very few movies about time travel are about the adventures of traveling through time.
Yeah. But I
Bill and
mean, I
Ted's
think
like
even
the
Endgame I
one.
would throw out as being one
Oh
like that
yeah,
is.
no, you know
Yeah.
what? Endgame is a great example, and it's almost like Endgame like kind of was so self aware of like we know,
Mhm. Right.
we
Yeah, exactly. And
we know.
Endgame feels like more like directly riffing on like Back to the Future 2, but like I'm like Back
Mhm.
to the Future 2 is because of Back to the Future because of time after time,
Exactly, exactly. Yeah,
So yeah, it's all in that lineage.
for sure, for sure.
I mean, another one I'd say I feel like Bill and Ted, a little bit, like
Yeah,
it's like a character, like it's a character driven. It's about interacting with historical people, like it's like, oh, what would that, because Bill and Ted, one of the best things is like we have all these people out of time.
Yeah.
They're running around the modern world, in that case,
That's
1989.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
so
10
it's like,
years later.
yeah, exactly. So instead of it being, Jack the Ripper and H.G. Wells, now it's like Joan of Arc and Genghis Khan and all these guys running around. So in San Dimas, in a California coastal town.
That's actually a really perfect. You know what? You're totally right. Because I was originally thinking, oh, that's the only movie where I think of where they really just travel through time. But then you're totally right. The fun is, but now let's get these people from different time periods to muck around in the present day. And again, it's 1989. So like I said before, it's hanging on to the decade that it's a part of. So mall culture and aerobics and etc. all part of that movie.
Yeah.
But it's kind of perfect. You have, Beethoven's here. Well, happens if Beethoven's playing a Casio? Or
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, Joan of Arc is seeing a bunch of women doing aerobics, and she's like, I can do this.
Yeah, because I think that's one way to really cleverly comment on the culture and the politics of the time, is to have a character from another time be pulled out of their time and look at it. And this movie does it so well because it's like, oh, you have these two opposing views from the turn of the last century. What do they think of the current day, 1979? How do they feel about these certain politics? Jack the Ripper feeling in place in this respect feels a certain way. H.G. Wells looking for his bright future, seeing aspects that were disappointing, but also seeing things that he didn't anticipate that he's very happy about. Feel like a good way for us to be like, this is how far we've come, and this is how far we still have to go.
Yes, no, very much so. And I think it does it in a way where it's not super preachy or anything, but it is part of the story. It's definitely in the message.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to mention my favorite comedy beat in the whole movie.
Okay.
It's when Wells went to McDonald's.
So good.
He's doing very good job of observing the locals and trying to how to navigate it. So when he sees the guy in front of the line where he's like, Big Mac, Diet Coke, and a fall fry. So he goes up to the register, and for a hot second, he's doing his accent. So here's like Malcolm McDowell going, Big Mac, small fries, and a tea.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, I'm trying to adapt to the culture, but I'm a proper English gentleman. I'll still have my tea, I'm just like,
he was relieved to see it too, and he's like, oh, tea's on the menu.
Yeah. He's like, I recognize that. And then that gets a great callback later when they're like at the rotating restaurant, and he's like, that's so much better than the Scottish place I went to. She's like, Scott, McDougal's. I was just like, chef's kiss.
So good.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I mean, any other thoughts you have as we're kind of like wrapping up here on Time After Time? Anything you didn't get to?
I mean, to kind of like emphasize your point about this movie being underrated, it does. I feel like it's a shame that like we're not talking about it as much as we used to. And I'm aware I'm in a generation that like movies were on a rotation and a schedule on TV, and like that's how I discovered movies. And we're not to sound like the old man in the room, but I have gray in my goatee. But I am aware that we are in an algorithm world, and the only way people might be able to learn about this movie is thankfully shows like yours, where they're like, well, what's something that we should watch? And I know that I get motivated to watch a movie either for the first time or again when I listen to a podcast. Like I listened to you and Karoshi's episode on Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and immediately after I listened to it, I went, oh, fuck, where's my disc? I haven't seen that movie in a while. I actually got really I like realized I haven't done that in a minute. I'm hoping that happens here, that like people who listen to us can be motivated to go like, oh, where is that? And I'm like, it's on Tubi, it's free.
Yeah.
You can't if you want a really smart, efficient, effective, really fun character-based movie that effectively uses its premise to the full tilt, go check it out. I highly recommend it. I just saw Andrew Lindy last night, and I told him I was gonna be on this episode. And he's like, "Oh, me and Melanie still," his wife Melanie, "Oh, we still haven't watched that." And I literally looked at Melanie and I'm like, "Melanie, the movie's premise is H.G. Wells versus Jack the Ripper," and she's like, "Why have I not heard of this?"
Right. Yeah, it's kind of one of those movies where you're like, "What? Yeah, why haven't I seen it?" And yeah, I think it did in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s had this kind of cable TV thing where that's where a lot of people discovered it. Like it's not the biggest thing, but like its rights were cheap, so it's something you could put on, especially late at night. You're flipping channels, you're kind of like flipping, you're like, what is happening here? Like I think I saw the time travel scene. I was like, this is interesting. Like I don't know what's going on here, but I'm down.
Yeah.
But that's kind of gone away. But as you mentioned, I think it's been replaced by something which is, you're not flipping, so you kind of have to search for it. But so hopefully, like that's kind of one of the core tenets of this podcast is like getting people to watch these movies. With it being like the rights being cheap, it shows up on Tubi, and like I definitely have sung the praises for Tubi time after time, ironically enough, on this show. But the way I watched it is, it's also something I haven't talked about. There is a treasure trove of movies that are just free on YouTube that are just like. They're like, real movies, like they're not YouTube originals or anything, but they're like movies that were like made by a big budget studios in like, the past. And this is one of those movies that's just on YouTube, So like you'll have to, watch it with the same YouTube ads and stuff like that, unless you have the premium or whatever. But you could just flip on and there's just like tons of movies. And by the time, I don't know if it still will be by the time this comes out, because it's always changing, but
Right.
Go check out the free movies on YouTube. They've got lots of good stuff on there. Like, and sometimes like Academy Award, like I think Arrival is on there, honestly. So yeah. So go check that out. There's lots of great resources. So it's shifted the way we can kind of like discover movies. But hey, you know what? If you're flipping YouTube and you see just in your recommendations, like I do, sometimes it's like Truman Show, one of my all-time favorite movies. I was on like a minute by minute movies by minutes podcast talking about Truman Show, and I rewatched it because it was on YouTube for free. So it's a great resource, and I'm glad that things like that, it's a different way that they exist, but I'm glad they still exist.
Yeah, agreed. And I guess if you need like guidance to the ones that sound interesting, you have shows like yours to kind of like lead people to that direction. So I'm hoping if you guys end up watching time after time, hit us up, let me know, and I'll be very happy.
Yes, please do. Please let us know in like the comments or send an email. I always love getting those. But yeah, my last question for you is, if you let's say JPG or Law or somebody invents a time machine and you have a chance to time travel anywhere you want or anytime you want, where would you go?
Ooh, God. Oh, I remember that question when I was younger, and and it's so funny. When I was a kid, I always said the future because my brain thought, it's gonna look like Back to the Future. But now as I'm an older,
right? You were like H.G. Wells. You're optimistic about this utopia future.
Now I'm like, I don't want to see how much worse we possibly could get. So instead, I actually would travel back to the 80s. Not for nostalgic, I will love the 80s culture. Like, no, it's like I was a kid in the 80s, and part of me, not how much I miss it, it's like, let me just look back on that time period and sort of, especially maybe when I was born in 83, so I wasn't cognizant then. So let me look around that year and just kind of just see where we're at, and then like can go, okay, 42 years later, this is where this is how it ended up being. I wouldn't mind that. I kind of don't want to go further in the past than that. Being a person of color limits my choices, and I do have maybe some more options than you. Just sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if I'm doing it in America, I guess like technically I could have gone to the Philippines, but I don't want to be in the Philippines in the 70s. There's a reason my parents left. So, so yeah, probably the 80s. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I've thought about it a lot. I think I still would probably want to go to the future. Because I'm like, as much as I was like, yeah, I could be fine in America in, you know, the railroad days or like whatever. I'm like, there's still like crazy diseases and stuff going around.
Ooh,
and
good
like,
point. Yeah.
you know, like I'm just like, I have my natural 2026 immune system, you know. I don't know. It could be fun to see dinosaur times, but I would be worried about getting eaten, you know. So I think maybe I would go to the future.
Okay. How far? Have you thought that?
I think, I mean, maybe 30 years, right? Because like maybe it's just because of that's instilled in me in Back to the Future, but because that's like about a generation, you know, like it's like that's about like I'm like, okay, that I'm like, I wonder how things will be different 30 years from now. Will we have gotten better? Because like things like nostalgia and all these, like, you know, the way that our society works feels like they go in 30-year cycles. So I'd be curious, like, what's things going to be like in the 60s, you know, in the 2060s?
Okay, cool. I can see that. Yeah.
And this was super fun. Thank you so much for coming on, Justin.
Oh, dude, thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to do this episode. Yeah,
absolutely. Before we go, anything else you want to let anybody know about and where they can find your podcast?
You can find Nothing New, a Remake podcast on Instagram. Nothing New Pod. And, you know, we have a Patreon as well, so if you like it, you can join our Patreon. It's like $1 a month. You can find me on Instagram, at Justin Quiz. I'm also on Threads, and I'm on Blue Sky as well. It's the Blue Sky handle is too long. I can never remember what it is anymore. And that's, you can find me there, and that's it.
Very nice, yeah. And then anybody who's listening, if you're not familiar, you know, you can follow the Underrated Movie Podcast on, you know, all the social media. We're pretty much Underrated Movie Podcast everywhere. I do a couple other podcast things as well, including Infinity Stones and Dragon Bones, where I talk about recently released Marvel Cinematic Universe properties. So I just covered Wonder Man, which was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun episode. And then I do every other Friday, I do a podcast called Midnight Film Society with my buddy Damien, where we kind of talk about more recently released movies and trends and stuff like that. And then I also have a Patreon where you can get episodes if you pay just $1 a week early and ad-free. And then if you're at $3 level, I have a bonus podcast called, this year's is called Amadeus, where I'm breaking down Amadeus in 15-minute chunks.
Nice.
I'm proud of that one. Because I don't have the patience to do it 1 minute at a time, but I will do it 15 minutes at a time because I love that movie. So yeah, just look up Underrated Movie Pod anywhere or go to underratedmoviepodcast.com to get all that stuff. But yeah, this was a blast. Thank you again for coming on, and I'll see you guys all next time.